Hello and welcome to the final episode of season 2 of the Red Zone podcast. My name is Nate Cohen and I am once again joined by my co-host Riley Davis. How's it going?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little depressed because college football's over.
I
Um,
know. What are we supposed to talk about? I can't talk to you again until August.
yeah, I'll just periodically just send you reels.
If I see something college football related, I'll be like, "Oh, I can
Yeah.
I can send it to Nate." But then
Our
other than
so
that, we can never talk
Fun
again.
fact to the viewers about our friendship. It only works with college football. I don't think we've
Yeah,
ever had a
we
conversation.
never talk any other time.
I legitimately don't think I've ever talked to Riley about something that's not college football related.
Like every other time, like all our texts are just,
Just
"When can
college
you
football.
record? When do you want
Yeah,
to
and
record?"
and did you see
Oh,
this
did you
college
see?
football thing?
Yeah, did you see Carson Beck went to Miami? Wow. When can you
Wow.
record?
Who cares?
We know nothing about each other's personal lives.
Yeah. Um but in all seriousness, college football is officially over now.
And
The
it's
playoffs have
sad.
come and gone. It is sad. But this postseason was pretty good. It was a pretty fire postseason, I would say. Um, well, I talk about bowl season. The playoffs were slightly disappointing.
They're
Um,
underwhelming.
well, they got good. It took them a sec to get up there, but I thought
The
the
first
semifinals,
round was terrible.
first round sucked. The quarters had two good games. The semis were incredible, and the national championship was fine.
I feel
The
like
semis, by the
there were a lot
way,
of chokers in the college football playoffs. In my
anyway.
opinion, there's one. Well, there's one
Well,
team
there's
that
one big
choked.
one, and it's the Texas game against Arizona State
Yeah, I was about to
that they
say. And
managed
then,
to
yeah,
somehow win.
Texas was choking from the Peach Bowl. And then Ohio State was like, stop.
Yeah. Um, which the semifinals were incredible. And we will have a top 10 list of our favorite games of the year at the end of the year. And spoiler, one of those semifinal games is going to be pretty high on my list. Um,
That's crazy.
Probably not both. I think I'm only including one of them, and it's maybe not the game everyone thinks I'm going to put into it.
Are you
Um,
doing it?
but we'll
Oh,
talk about it when we get there. Um, So news, there's no rankings. They released the final AP poll, but no one really cares because it's just like it's not the preseason poll, so it doesn't really matter. Indiana ended up finishing ranked 10th in the country, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to see my team ranked 10th. Um,
we're
News
19th,
wise,
which is the first time we've been actually ranked after the postseason in a hot sec. So I'm excited.
news wise, big news coming
Um,
out of Georgia. Carson Beck took his name out of the draft and transferred to the University of Miami
for $7 million. Is that right? It was
for
7 million, right?
$7 million and being able to live with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So
So maybe his snaps won't get leaked anymore.
no, they still will probably, but
Just in
so
Miami.
so this is an interesting move. This is kind of the first time we've ever seen someone pull their name out of the draft to get into the transfer portal. To my knowledge, um, it's a good get for Miami. Beck is a good quarterback. Even if we've been shitting on him the whole year, he's still a
He
top
turned it
quarterback.
around in the end of their season.
He's still a top quarterback in the country. If he sorts out his interception problems, he'll be good. He'll have more weapons at Miami. Some of the issues with Beck this year is that Georgia had zero good wide receivers, and some of the interceptions were on Beck, but also there wasn't a lot he could do when he had to throw to Arian Smith, who dropped every single ball he threw. Um, so I think this will probably be pretty good for Miami. I don't think Beck's an upgrade from Cam Ward. I think it's probably, if anything, a little bit of just it's a linear move, if not just a bit of a downgrade, because Cam Ward is probably the best quarterback in the country this year. I'd put him over Shador. I'd say it's Cam, Shador, probably one and two. Um, so it's interesting. It's an interesting move.
Oh, isn't that news? Isn't Coach Prime aiming for isn't he want to
An
coach the
NFL gig,
Cowboys?
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all
Took two
rumors.
years. Two
It's all
years.
rumors. It's all rumors, what we're saying. But it is heavily speculated that Deion Sanders could go and coach the Dallas Cowboys next year, which would just be hilarious. The Cowboys would somehow get even worse. And
Damn.
you know, it's funny. And other big news, speaking of NFL, is Bill Belichick some coming out of the woodwork to coach UNC. This was a rumor at last time we talked about this. I'm pretty sure in the posts in the conference championship review. This was a rumor that turned into an official thing where Bill Belichick is now going to coach in college, which I don't think he's going to know how to do it.
I don't think that's a good, like, it's not gonna end well. Because didn't he have like complaints from players of like how he treated them? And now it's gonna be in college, so these
Yeah,
people are gonna like respond to that way worse.
this will be an
It's kind of a great idea.
interesting development. Um,
Yeah, to say the least.
and other than that, news with just transfers. Indiana has done incredible in the transfer portal. Took a quarterback who took Fernando Mendoza from Cal, who picked us over UGA, which is pretty funny. So eat shit, UGA. Um,
Dang.
and yeah, we've done basically the same thing last year, which is just took a bunch of role players, people who have been starting in the league for 2 or 3 years, and transfer them to Indiana. So
Well,
that's
also,
cool.
do you want to talk about the NIL stuff they all did, or was it NIL stuff? Salary thing?
No, because it's not
Okay,
purely college football related.
I
It was
see.
like a collective thing.
The collective thing.
It was a thing for like I think all sports. If you
All
want, there's
sports.
an Indiana NIL thing that happened a few days ago. It's not purely college football. Also, it's about my university and it's in a bad light, so I don't really want to talk about it. But um, do
I got
your
that
own
notification. I
research.
was like, "Oh,
Yeah, do your own research about that. And then we got to bowl season, which let me say, bowl season, not including the playoffs, was this is one of the most chaotic bowl seasons we've had in recent memory, I would say. A lot of really
yeah."
fun, funny games that happened. We're not going to hit every bowl game because obviously we didn't watch every bowl game, but we're going to hit the ones that kind of like were funny and like, you know, meant things. Um, let's start with
We will
Christmas
talk about the
Eve.
playoffs.
We will talk about every
Christmas.
playoff game, but we'll do that after this. Let's talk about Christmas Eve, Tuesday, December 24th, in the Hawaii Bowl between South Florida and San Jose State. A game that went to 5 overtimes and somehow wasn't the most overtimes that someone hit during bowl season this year. Um, yeah, this is kind of
Overtime is
a
the true to season.
chaotic game from the start. No one really watched it because it was on really late on Christmas Eve. I watched it because I'm a sicko and I wanted to watch college football. Also, I don't celebrate Christmas, so whatever.
That'll do
And
it.
um, yeah, this was just funny, funny football, funny bowl game football. That's kind of all I got to say about this one. You, Riley.
Let's see. No, I was with my family on Christmas Eve.
And on Boxing Day, we got probably one of the best slates of bowl games we got the whole year with
The closest ones.
the game above Sports Bowl between Toledo and Pitt that went into 6 overtimes. Toledo won 48-46. Riley, did you watch this game?
No, I was again
Okay, so
Christmas.
Toledo stormed the field 3 times, and each time they didn't win the game. So the first time they stormed the field, it was on a fourth down that they stopped Penn State on. Pitt, my bad. They stopped Pitt on it. They stormed the field. There was a flag. It was on Toledo. Pitt got the ball, went back down to the field, had a 4th and goal from the 1 to tie the game up in overtime, stopped them, stormed the field again. It
Did
got
see
overturned
this.
into a touchdown. And then in like the 4th overtime, the same thing happened. Pitt had a 2-point conversion, stopped them, stormed the field, flag. Pitt makes a conversion. And then somehow in the 6th overtime, Toledo pulled through. So good
So
for
the
them.
storming worked.
Eventually, just keep storming the field. Eventually, it'll work.
See,
The
that's the
rate,
rule.
not the guaranteed rate bowl, just the rate bowl in Arizona was a shootout and a half between Kansas State and Rutgers. Kansas State rushed for like 400 yards in this game. Rutgers blew like a 14-point lead, and yeah, it
I
was
think
pretty
didn't
funny.
we? Oh my God, why is it already showing me 2025 schedule? That's not what I wanted to see. Hold up. I was trying to talk about Rutgers for a second, but it won't let
Why?
me see
Why are we
this
talking
year.
about Rutgers?
Because I feel like there was also an interesting game. Yeah, okay. Rutgers had like not like an interesting season this year. Because like didn't we they I don't know. They all like they were
What are
close
you
with
talking
Illinois.
about?
Because I remember talking about them earlier on in the season.
We
That was
talked
like,
about them because they
that
had a
was
game
weird.
versus Washington that was kind of funny.
That's probably why. That's what I'm thinking of. I don't like that it's already for 25. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Anyway, then we got to the Friday slate of games, which was starting all the Power 5 games. In the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, Navy beat Oklahoma as Oklahoma faltered on a 2-point conversion late in the game.
Let's go,
Um,
Navy.
let's go, service academies. Can't believe Alabama lost this team, but whatever. Birmingham Bowl was straight chaos the whole time. There was about like 1,000 penalties called in the third quarter. Game got delayed because of weather. Um, Vandy almost choked a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter. And this game was just pure
Georgia Tech
chaos
lost.
24/7. Georgia Tech did lose, which is a disappointing way for them to end their season after almost, I would say respectfully choking against Georgia and then, kind of getting their ass kicked by
That
Vandy.
Georgia game was painful.
Georgia Tech still has a lot to do if they want to be considered a contending team in anyone's eyes. This was a good step forward for them this year, but
Okay, I
they
was about
still
to
have
say, give them
issues.
credit where there's credit due, because
No, I'm giving them
they
credit
had
where credit is due. Brent
a
Key is one of
better
the best
season.
coaches in the country. I just think Georgia Tech needs to take a step forward next year and not be stuck at this kind of like same little spot they're in. Um, then we had the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, which I didn't watch. The DirecTV which Arkansas beat Texas Tech. The DirecTV Holiday Bowl, which was fun, pointsy. Syracuse won 52-35. Syracuse, huh? 10-win season for them, finishing 10-3 on the year, beating Miami when they were fighting for a playoff spot. Um, Kyle McCord did wonders for them this year, broke like 1,000 single season records, and good job, Syracuse. And then the other game that night was Texas A&M choking and losing to USC 35-31. Really, it
ATSC.
started with Oklahoma, the trend of SEC teams doing not very well in bowls slash postseason this year, unless they were playing like kind of a shit team. Um, and we'll talk about that with both of our teams losing against Big Ten teams in very painful fashions. Then we got to Saturday, December 28th, where North Carolina lost to UConn, which is funny because UConn sucks.
I
Um,
know there's a couple of these ones I'm like, how did that happen? Well,
Nebraska
also,
finally won a bowl game, finished a season above 500.
are we skipping the Pop Tart Bowl?
I'm going in order. The Pop Tart
Oh,
Bowl
it's
was
not it's
after
a
this.
different order in my screen.
Well, the Pop Tart Bowl happened in a dead shootout between Iowa State and Miami. Probably the funniest game of bowl season. They resurrected Pop Tart Jesus. Made a joke
Yeah,
about
if
him being Jesus.
like the
Um,
mascot, the commercialism in like the bowl games is like something else, but the Pop Tart Bowl is such an interesting experience.
I really find it funny that as a sports marketing student that I have to do a lot of work studying the Pop Tarts Bowl because
It
this is
went
a master
viral.
class on marketing. It was also a
Yeah, it
really good
was.
game, not without its share of controversy, as Cam Ward just kind of pulled himself from the game in the second half, which proceeded in Miami choking their lead that they had at that point. Um, I don't really see a massive problem with this. I would have, if he plays a half, I would just rather him play the whole game. But you want to protect your draft stock. Go in, at least have some time to play at the end of the season, and then go get drafted, get paid a ton of money. So I don't see a massive problem with this, but I can understand why people were nonplussed with Cam Ward after all of this
See what
happened.
Carson Beck does next year.
Yep. And then we had the Valero Alamo Bowl, which is probably the second most important game from this day, where Colorado got their ass kicked by BYU, 34-14. Also, one of the worst announcing jobs I've ever seen for this game, where the announcers the whole time were like, "Man, you really have to give credit to Colorado for this season. This is a bad end," but they basically just never praised BYU the whole time, despite BYU being the same team that absolutely pimp slapped Colorado all over San Antonio. This game was never close, and Colorado finishes their season losing like I think it was like 3 of their last 5. It was a bad skid for them to end the season. Um,
And now their coach is leaving them.
and now their coach might be leaving them.
Might.
Might. Then we got to New Year's Eve, where both of our teams played. We'll talk about that at the end. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Washington had a valiant comeback, stopped dead with a 2-point conversion at the end. and LSU kicked Baylor's doors in. Ole Miss destroyed Duke. Minnesota beat Virginia Tech in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And those were kind of the highlights of bowl season. If we're forgetting something, it's probably because we didn't watch it, or we're forgetting it, and we're just trying to make this podcast not 1,000 hours long because there's not a lot to talk
Because we
about.
still have to talk about the playoffs.
Yep.
That's where
So
we
let's
would.
talk about the two other games that we didn't talk about that happened on New Year's Eve.
You wanna go
Alabama versus
first?
Michigan and South Carolina versus Illinois. Yeah, I'll go first. Um, so let me preface this. This is
Hmm.
gonna sound like I'm coping, and it probably because I
So
am.
is mine.
But when I said that I thought Alabama deserved to get into the playoffs over SMU, I didn't entirely mean it. I thought we were a better team than SMU at the time, which I still think we are because both of our teams had bad performances. But like, yeah. So this game was just kind of every bad part of this year rolled into one. Alabama lost again to Michigan 2 times in the same year. I talked about this with my dad, who, as this podcast is well known, has been watching Alabama football since the 70s. Um, and we kind of had a hard time figuring out when last time Alabama played this poorly. Um, it was the Oklahoma game from this year, but like past that, this was bad. I don't think I've ever seen Alabama just look this disinterested. Jalen Milroe sucks. I'm sorry to say it, but I'm just so sick and tired of him. I'm so glad he's declaring for the draft. Um, he has points where he's good, but like he just was too inconsistent this year. He took a massive step back from last year. Um, it was just like anytime he even did anything like good, it came with a negative. Like he could never be fully good without doing something bad. He had like a 40-yard rush at the end of the first half that put Alabama in field goal range, but he decided to not step out of bounds, instead try to make a move that wasted a bunch of clock, and we had to waste a timeout. So this whole season was just a disaster from the start. Um, I think I talked with my dad about this. I don't blame DeBoer for this. I don't really even blame Womack for this, the defensive coordinator. Defense played really well in this game. They just kind of had nothing to give because they kept having to deal with Michigan getting the ball on their own 30-yard line. And don't get me wrong, Michigan's dog shit, doesn't have a good offense, and is carried by a good defense. But their dog shit was better than our dog shit. So, it's like the exact same freaking thing that happened in the Rose Bowl last year where Michigan didn't beat Alabama. Alabama beat Alabama. And I don't care if this sounds like I'm coping or I'm like just not giving Michigan the credit they deserve, but Michigan was not a very good football team this year. And we saw that they didn't deserve to beat Ohio State. They got lucky that Ohio State's play calling was so bad in that game that they could just drunkenly stumble into winning that game. They didn't deserve to beat really half the teams they beat this year. And then we ended up in the Alabama game where Alabama beat themselves. Don't get me wrong, Michigan's defense was very good and forced a lot of turnovers. But once again, we're stuck in the same part where Alabama beats Alabama, and that was the case for every game we lost this year. And it's just a microcosm of this team, which is one of the most annoying Alabama teams I've covered since watching this team in 2012 was my first year consciously watching Alabama. I think Nick Sheridan's a clown and doesn't know how to call plays very well. Um, and this whole year was just a disaster. I'm very excited that it was over. I kind of laughed when the game was done because I was like, thank God I don't have to watch this trash ass football team play any more football this year. And yeah, very upset about it. It was probably the most annoyed, not the most annoyed I had been because the Tennessee game, but like definitely like I wasn't this annoyed after the Oklahoma game. I was very annoyed after this game. Um, there's building blocks for next year. This reports came out that DeBoer just kind of this wasn't a DeBoer-led team. This was still basically a Saban team with DeBoer coaching it. Next year in 25 will be DeBoer's kind of his first year with his system, which I think will probably go much better. Milroe is not a DeBoer type quarterback, so it'll go well. I hope next season's going to be a gauntlet, but
Who's y'all's quarterback for next? Y'all know?
it's either going to be Ty Simpson or Keelan Russell, who's Keelan Russell's the best quarterback, like was the best rookie quarterback coming in this year. And Ty Simpson has been kind of just on the bench the whole year, but he's a good pocket passer. He's much more of a DeBoer type quarterback, but we'll see. Yeah, overall, frustrating end of the year. Hate that we keep losing to Michigan because I hate Michigan with a passion. Um,
More.
and yeah, tough way to end the year. We finished 17th, which is the lowest Bama's been since '07. Anyway, you want to talk about South Carolina, Illinois?
Yeah. Very similar sentiments. Very disappointing way to end the season. I was like heartbroken. It was very frustrating. Trying to remember how I felt at this game because we had to be there. Um, and all of us were, since it was New Year's Eve, we're like, well, I'm gonna leave that in 2024. Yeah, it was frustrating to say the very least. I don't know what the heck Lenore Sellers was doing this game, but it was not the Lenore Sellers we'd had for the past 6 weeks, where he'd been like actually showing up and like performing. This was definitely a weird game. I don't know what the hell was going on. Our defense couldn't get it together for like the first half, and then we kind of started to. It just wasn't enough. Again, our offense wasn't making the moves that we should have been. um, Jesus. Yeah, and so that was just like Jesus, okay. Frustrating to watch and just like I don't know. I felt kind of helpless because I was like, what are we doing? It was just I don't know, it was frustrating, to say the very least. And then also like Illinois kept doing that fun thing where they'd be subbing players in as the clock is going down, which is really great. And it's really frustrating to just watch. And you're like, oh my God. Um, and then I don't know if anybody watched this game, but Shane Beamer kind of blew up a little bit because there was an injured player on our sideline ish. And so the Illini coach went over, I
Brett
guess, to
Bielema.
check on him. Yeah, Brett Bielema went over to check on him and then walked up to Beamer and kept like doing like the timeout, like to mock him. And so Beamer lost his mind. Um, which low key, I stand behind him because I was like, you know what, you deserve to flip your lid a little bit.
I
Man hasn't
disagree.
really.
I
Nah, well, I
think
mean, it's
I'm
my
not even
coach.
saying this just to hate. I think you needed to have a little bit more composure. Like, that's just what Bielema does. He just gets under people's skin and like I
Nah,
think
I hate people like that. No, I can't
he
stand behind people like
outcoached
that in any way
he
whatsoever.
outcoached
So
Beamer
I don't
in
care. I do not
circles.
care. I can't get away. I cannot get behind people who are like, no, I will never. Yeah, no, I can't get behind people who like that's their thing. I'm like, you're a
I think it's
professional.
really
Don't
funny.
you think it's funny because you're from the outside looking in, but I no, I can't get behind it. I was pissed. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? You're a grown ass man. Get on your side of the line or just check on your player and stop talking. Um,
But it
and then
worked.
the entire stadium was going, Beamer, Beamer. It was like really fucking loud, but it was really fun. Um, I don't know. Yeah. Again, really underwhelming end to the season, especially since like the 6 weeks leading up to this had been like great. And so like to end it this way, it was just like we weren't playing like we were in those great 6 weeks at all. And it was just frustrating to watch. Again, like weren't really showing up to our full potential. Outcome, you were saying Bama's like lowest they have been, but we ranked postseason. So that's just like good news for us. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was just frustrating. Ched Z, though, on a different note, if you don't know the Cheez It mascot, his name is Ched Z. He's a very interesting dude. He's got sunglasses. He's a Cheez It. And there was a wedding during a 2 minute timeout. They put these people on a trailer and drove them around the field, and they got married with the Cheez It mascot officiating. So that was interesting. But yeah, it was a fun experience until the end of the game, which was frustrating. But other than that, it was great. No,
Oh
it
man,
wasn't. The game
both our
wasn't great,
teams
but
had they some like
underwhelming finishes.
also man, the SEC kind of got dog walked in games against good teams this postseason, didn't they?
They did. It was like, what are we doing, guys? We gotta wake up.
I was very happy to see it because Despite the fact that I'm an Alabama fan, I am not an SEC fan, and we'll talk about it now with the playoffs that kicked off in the first game of the 12-team playoff was Indiana versus Notre Dame. So let's just talk about it. Um,
I watched it.
I am very proud of our boys. I am very proud of Indiana for this year. I think that they definitely deserve to make the playoffs. They ended up having a tough run to end the year. No one really wanted to give us credit for it, but we had to play Ohio State and Michigan, and it it was it was tough. It was a tough game to watch. I was depressed the entire time, but looking back at it the next day, the game goes different with a few things going our way. I think if that Jeremiah Love touchdown doesn't happen, and if Rourke doesn't throw that stupid interception, who knows how that game would have gone. They showed fight at the end. It was garbage time, but they came back, and proud of them. Excited for next year. I think they'll be pretty good next year too. Um, Now I want to talk about SEC bias, because that was the big talking point of this playoff for a lot of it, was SEC bias from ESPN and Kirk Herbstreit and people, dumb fucking idiots on Twitter. And let me just say this. The SEC did not do good enough to warrant the shit talk that they gave. The SEC is undefeated in hypothetical games, but in the real games, they did pretty poor this playoffs. So, next time they want to talk shit, stay in your lane. I'm talking specifically to, sorry, Riley, South Carolina, Alabama, and Ole Miss fans, who were the loudest three contingent of SEC fans, shit talking Indiana, SMU, the teams that didn't deserve to make the playoffs in their minds. I shit talk SMU too, but, they still
I
did
didn't
only
do
lose.
anything, bro.
Riley, when no, never mind. Not everything's about you. Um,
You're saying
and
all South Carolina fans. I'm like, I'm just
I didn't say
here,
all
man.
South Carolina fans. I said the three contingents of fans are South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama.
Hmm.
Anyway, those were the three teams, and it was annoying to see, but they can cry more. We made the playoffs and they didn't. And still proud of this team. They ended up losing. The only two losses Indiana had this year were the national champion and the runner-up. So, you know, and
I
hey,
know. I was asking about that.
we had the
Did I end up
smallest.
asking you?
I don't think you did.
I was like gonna ask who you were actually, if you were rooting for anybody
I
in
was
the
just rooting
national
for a close
championship.
game. I didn't care who won.
It,
I just wanted a close game.
it, it was not really. Yeah,
Well, it got there at the end.
yeah,
Um,
it was exciting for a bit, and then it was kind of disappointing.
yeah. So yeah, that's my little rant on anti-SEC.
Okay.
Also, I'm very proud of Indiana, and we'll see how they do next year. Probably somewhere around the bounds of like 8-4 or 9-3.
All right. This is not a rant, but it is my take from the playoffs. Is that Texas? It branches off of SEC teams didn't do well at all. What the hell is Texas doing? Is my playoff take.
Are we skipping? Because there's three other games we got to talk about in the first
Well, yeah,
round.
but they're also in the first round, but they were fine in the first round. They beat Clemson, thank God.
So can we talk about the other two games that happened in the first round?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Day two of the playoffs kicked off with Penn State thoroughly thumping SMU, 38-10. SMU looked out of their league. The lights just seemed a little too bright for just the whole team. Unfortunate for them. Didn't really help any of their narratives. Um, Next was, as he talked about, Texas Clemson, which was probably the best game from round one. Clemson came back. It was a one possession game at one point, but Texas kind of just asserted
Was
their
it
will at the end of the game. It was. It got down to like a 7 point game, I'm pretty sure.
No, I was gonna say, was it Brian Kelly who like tweeted something snarky
It was Lane
about
Kiffin.
it was Lane Kiffin?
It was the whole time any team that wasn't SEC got blown out. He was like,
Well,
"Wow,
when he
what an
was
interesting
like really
playoffs."
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So, and then Ohio State pimp slapped Tennessee 42-17, which I was very happy about. Um. And then we got to the quarterfinals, which had a mixed success rate, I would say.
Arizona State Texas game was exciting to watch.
That was an incredible game of football. Um, Texas choked a what was it like seven? It was like 17 or like 18-point lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
16-point lead in the fourth quarter with like 10 minutes
Yeah.
left. Um, Cam Scattaboo turned into God himself. And Arizona State had this game on the ropes. Texas had
I
like a fourth and
really
13,
I was
and they
hoping
allowed a
that they would get
touchdown.
it.
It's the
Yeah.
right play call. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. They blitzed everyone, and that blitz just needs to get home. Blitz didn't get home. Matthew Golden was open over the top. Texas scores on the first play, second overtime, and then um, they throw up. Arizona State throws a back-breaking. Sam Levitt throws a back-breaking interception.
See, we were
This was an
on
incredible game.
a bus at this game, and you know it's like a good game when the but like it's on like the little bus TVs, and then you know it's a good game when like halfway through the bus driver like turned on the volume because he was like and like loud too. He was like, "This is interesting." Yeah, I thought
Um,
Arizona State was about to pull through, but then they didn't.
Good
But
for
that
Arizona
falls
State.
into my I know, but then it was like
They were
heartbreaking.
they
I was
were
like,
one
they
of
were
they were
so
one of the
close,
teams that a bunch of people thought were just going to get their ass kicked.
blown out.
But they didn't.
They
Good for
didn't.
them.
Texas choked though. Texas was
They
like
did.
because I was initially I said this to somebody that I was like initially I thought that like I would like to see an interesting like Texas play Ohio State or Oregon and it'd be like an interesting for the Cotton Bowl. But then I was like after this game, maybe not.
Yeah. Um yeah, it was a little interesting from Texas. They weren't ever consistent through the whole playoffs. Um you did skip a game again. Um you're not keeping
I
with
was
the
I said whoever in the
you
I said
skipped the
I
Fiesta
said
Bowl.
this was
You
well this was my
skipped the
honest
Fiesta
reaction.
Bowl.
My honest reaction watching the Chick-fil-A Bowl was literally that's where my mind was
Well,
maybe they
anyway,
wouldn't be a great Cotton
Riley
Bowl
skipped
contender.
the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State beat Boise State 31-14. Um, this was the score line deceives because this was actually pretty close up until like the last 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Boise State played well, but Penn State did an incredible job stopping Ashton Genty. Their run defense, Abdul Carter, were smothering the whole game, and Boise State just didn't have enough talent to keep up with Penn State. Kind of similar with Indiana and Notre Dame. Indiana's talent just wasn't good enough. Boise State's talent wasn't good enough. But once again, good to see Boise back. It felt right seeing Boise in the Fiesta Bowl wearing those uniforms in that stadium. Um, it's always I think college football is better when you see teams like Boise fighting at the top. They were a constant in the BCS era, and hopefully they are back to being world beating, kind of always contending for the playoffs. Um, next was the
Almost had a
most
Heisman winner.
yeah. Next was the
True
most
Heisman winner.
surprising playoff game, probably the whole playoffs, as Ohio State decimated Oregon 41-21 in the Rose Bowl. But don't get me wrong, this scoreline really makes Oregon look it really flatters
Makes
Oregon.
Oregon look better.
This game was 34-0 at one point in the first half. Um,
Yeah.
just it was so every team that had a first round bye lost. Spoilers to Georgia losing to Notre Dame. Um, so every first round team had a bye. Every team that had a bye lost. Also, I think they need to redo the seeding for the playoffs. I think it's kind of like asinine that Oregon, who played the best in the regular season, had to go up against either Tennessee or Ohio State instead of getting an easier matchup, which would have been probably like Texas or Clemson or not Clemson, Texas or like Notre Dame or someone. Like they should have had an easier game than they had. Um, but that being said, they looked just out of their league in the first half of this game. And the whole time we said this was theirs to lose. Like this was Oregon's national championship to lose. They'd been playing the best of anyone the whole year. They got into the Rose Bowl. They got punched in the throat and then never
Oregon
knew.
was my biggest disappointment of the playoffs because I think I don't know if I said it on here, but I've definitely said before that I thought they were gonna be in the national championship,
Oh, I
and
predicted them to win the
they
national
didn't make
championship.
they didn't make it past the quarterfinals, and I was like, okay,
Yeah,
so
they played poorly.
yeah,
Um,
that was disappointing.
then
They're my biggest disappointment of the playoffs.
I agree. Then what should have been that night, and on a more somber note, the Sugar Bowl got postponed because of the terrorism attack in New Orleans. Um, still New Orleans
But
is. kind of getting over that. That meant that there was an air around this Notre Dame Georgia game where it was kind of hard to fully enjoy it. Um,
Yeah.
with the game getting
Yeah, I was about
postponed.
to say like I'm glad that like well the people that I know were there are safe.
Yeah,
Um
we both of us know people in the
yeah,
UGA people that were there.
yeah.
Um,
And so I'm glad that like
yeah.
a lot of people were safe, but also terribly sorry to
Thoughts go
those who
out
were
to,
not.
everyone that was involved in the incident one way or another. And then that meant that this game kind of had an air of there was something bigger than the game going on the whole time we were watching it. Um, it also doesn't help the game itself was kind of boring. Outside of a 2 minute stretch where Notre Dame scored 17 points, both of these offenses struggled the whole time. Georgia had to start Gunnar Stockton, who to Stockton's credit, he looked pretty decent.
I was
Like
about to
he'll
say Stockton's
definitely
not
be able to
awful.
be he'll be able to be a starting quarterback next year for Georgia if they don't pick someone up. Um, I thought he looked good. Once again, Georgia doesn't have any good wide receivers. There was a few of them that Stockton placed really well into Georgia wide receivers' hands that they just weren't able to bring in. Cough, cough. I'm looking at you, Arian Smith and Dylan Bell. Um, and yeah, Notre Dame just kind of smothered them. Got a fumble at the end of the second half, and then an immediate kickoff return for a touchdown to start the second half. And Georgia was never coming back from that. Georgia, this team was not built to come back from a lead that big with the players that they had. And Georgia's kind of issue of this year, which was letting teams get ahead of them, finally came back to bite them in the ass. Um, and thank God about it because Georgia is really annoying. Um, I don't think that this is the end of them being good, but I don't think they will ever be this. I think they are about to
I
fall
think
into
they're
Clemson waters from when
that's yeah,
Clemson
they're like
contributed, when
going
Clemson was
from like
battling.
national championship contender to then just like
They will
not too bad,
perennially
not too
be 9 wins
great.
a season or more.
It's like
I
us.
think I think the thing with Georgia is they will be like Clemson. They battled for the national championship from 15 up to 19, and then since then it's been a bit of a harder time for them to get back into the flow of things. I still think we'll see Georgia probably in the at-large bids, but I don't see them winning the SEC again in a bit because I just think there's teams that are more talented than they are. They lost a lot of key pieces with Carson Beck and Travis Etienne, which were kind of their whole offense this year. They have Oscar Delp,
Trevor.
who is Trevor Etienne, my bad. Um, Delp is a really good tight end, but they need to fix wide receiver. Their defense took a step back this year, and they're probably going to even be losing more pieces off of that.
Bro,
So
they used to
if
have
I'm
like the fantastic defense, and now it's okay.
if I'm a Georgia fan, I would be a little cautious looking into the next few years. They'll still be good. They'll still battle for the
Bark a
SEC.
little less.
Yeah, bark a little less, be a little bit more humble. Um, and yeah, good job also on Notre Dame. They executed a flawless game plan despite not playing as well.
Yeah,
And
I was
then we
gonna
got
say,
oh,
oh, Texas being biggest disappointment, Notre Dame being biggest surprise slash least
I thought you said
disappointment.
Oregon was the biggest disappointment.
I mean, yeah, Jesus, Oregon being this biggest disappointment.
And
Jesus,
then we got to the
can't
semifinals,
talk.
which whew,
Those were good.
the playoffs had been okay to this point. No, the quarterfinals were good. But boy, both of these semifinal games were game of the year candidates. Let's start with the Orange Bowl, which this spoiler is going to feature very high on my list
That's
of
what I
top
was
10
thinking
games of the
you were
year.
talking about because I was like, that
This
one was
is the
good,
perfect hard nose,
bro. It was
physical,
great.
beat the shit out of each other, rock fight football that I love.
It
They
was good. I
they
liked this
beat
game.
the piss out of each other for 60 minutes. One of the most physical football games that I have seen. No team really ever had a crap ton of momentum.
Which
This
is
was
what
a
you want to see in a freaking playoff game.
this
These
was
are
a
like
perfect
good
football game.
matchup.
Maybe outside of the first half being a tad boring, but like even then they were still kind of just beating the crap out of each other. I
It was
loved
good.
this game. This will rank very highly on my list.
Me
Um,
too.
Got to pour one out for Drew Aller. This was easily his worst performance of the year, and he got bailed out by the refs a few times. But that interception with 30 seconds left is going to haunt him for the rest of his life. I don't know what Penn
God, this is
State
a
was
good
doing there.
game.
I don't know what Penn State was doing there. Um, it was just a baffling decision, baffling throw from Aller. Notre Dame
Yeah.
executed when they needed to. Jeremiah Love had himself a game. Big, it was just big boy football. I did kind of figure after this game, neither of these teams was going to win the national championship because like 1,000 players got hurt in this game, um, and like 90% of them were from Notre Dame.
They
Um,
just kept going down. It was kind of like that Tech UGA game where the Tech just kept dropping like flies.
this is kind of what happens when you have such a hard nosed game like this. And I'm not complaining. I loved this game. This was
It's
easily one of my
great.
favorite games of the year. Beat it was I think better than the Ohio State Texas game, which probably is a hot take, but I don't really care. Um, yeah, incredible game. Uh, Penn State. A funny tweet I saw is Penn State managed to win like 15 games this year and yet didn't change a single narrative about their team. Everyone still thinks Penn State can't beat good teams. Um,
I just don't like Penn State, but
I don't care about Penn State.
yeah, I just
Aller's
don't like
coming
them.
back next year, including Nick Singleton. Basically, Penn State's returning a lot of players next year. Their whole running back core that was so good. They're returning Aller, a decent part of their defense. So expect Penn State to be pretty good next year too, contending for national championship. But it's good to see for Penn State. It's good to see that you can get here, build on it for next year, maybe beat some good teams for once. And yeah, this was a perfect 10 out of 10 football game.
It was great. I good stuff.
And then next, the Cotton Bowl. Also, not a top 10 game of the year for me, but easily top 20, maybe top 15, depending on where you put it. Ohio State beats Texas 28-14. Um, just a baffling play call decision from Sark on the 1 yard line to end this game. I get running up the gut on the first and goal call, that's fine, but just the pitch 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage that Ohio State saw coming every day of the week. Just it was a bad play call, cost them. Jack Sawyer, who was the butt of the joke for everyone in college football for like 3 months, for not for three, but about a month after that Michigan game where he threw a hissy fit temper tantrum, has the strip sack return for a touchdown that effectively sent Ohio State to the national championship. Um, yeah, great game, fun throughout the whole thing. Um, yeah, this is what college football should be about. Was these two semifinal games?
They were
You got
good games.
anything?
I don't know what there's nothing else to say besides like they were great games. Orange Bowl was like fantastic to watch. And I
Orange
was
Bowl
like,
was the best game of the whole playoffs.
yeah, I was cheering for Notre Dame and I was like, "Oh my God." Like I was excited. I was pumped.
And then we got to the national championship in Atlanta, where Ohio State, despite losing to Michigan, losing to Oregon, getting shit on by the entirety of college football, they pulled through. Ryan Day finally gets the monkey off his back and wins his first national championship. And weirdly, kind of seems like just no one cares. Like, we've moved
Yeah,
on very quickly from this. No one really cared in the week leading up to the game. I have a few ideas on why. As a sports marketing student, it is my job to kind of understand why things might not have hype. I think a few reasons for this. No one likes either of these teams and their fan bases. Um, these are two of the
you
most
don't like
annoying fan.
Irish people.
No, I don't like Catholics for legal reasons. That's a joke. Um,
Damn.
that was a joke, by the way.
All of this is satirical,
Catholics
guys.
Catholics are chill.
I'm just tired. This is how my
For the
voice
most part.
sounds.
Um, yeah, no, it just kind of it's two fan bases no one likes. It's two teams no one likes. The fact that it took place in like the depth of the NFL playoffs doesn't help. Um, yeah, I think that's probably why no one cared about this game. And it was mid for a majority of it until Notre Dame staged a very late comeback, which fell short very anticlimactically on a 3rd and 11 bomb to Jeremiah Smith that won the game for Ohio State. Um, Ohio State is your national champions for 2025, 2024-25 season. Um,
Don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
not a
Notre
lot else to
Dame.
say about this game.
Well, Notre Dame, like, I don't know. I low key thought it was
Congrats to
going to
them.
be more of a blowout than it was. And congrats to them that it wasn't. Just because, like, I don't know. Oh, they have, like, a lot of their O-line is injured. And so like going into this game, you're like, oh, this is gonna be interesting. But then they started off the game with like a great drive all the way down, Riley Leonard running it in for a touchdown.
They went on
And
a
like
18 play, 9 minute and 45-second drive to start this game that ended in a
great
touchdown.
drive. And then, you know, then Ohio State like showed up. But Notre Dame had a good way to finish their season. I wouldn't be worried at all if I was a Notre Dame fan, if I was Irish. So like, yeah,
They
I don't
got
know.
they
I
got
would be
their
proud.
guy. They got their
They
guy
did.
with Marcus Freeman. He is easily one of the most improved coaches in
First black
the
head
country.
coach in the national championship,
Good for him.
which is
Um,
it's 2025. Good Lord.
well, and then the college football season ended. Um,
And
if
everyone was
you're
sad.
upset that we're not talking about the national championship more, cry more. The game was kind of boring for like 70% of it. And I also really don't like Ohio State, so them winning was a little frustrating. Um, so yeah, that was the it. I thought, I think Pat McAfee hyperbolizes things a lot, but this was probably one of the best college football seasons in recent memory.
That's
Um,
what I was about to say. It was solid. It was up there. It's better than last season.
let's put it. It was definitely better than last season.
The red
Let's
zone gauge of the
put it
two
on the
seasons,
red
it's
zone
one
gauge.
of the two
Well, we don't
seasons we've
have the
had.
other season on the red zone gauge, but red
It was
zone
on.
gauge for the whole season. Riley, what do you think?
I would do a nine.
I was gonna say 9.
Yeah, nine.
The narratives were frustrating to hear this year. There was a few weeks where nothing really happened, um, but overall, this was a very good college football season. Um, congrats to Ohio State. Um, we'll be back
We will.
in.
As we said, we were gonna make YouTube
We're gonna
videos.
make YouTube videos ranking stuff from this season,
Figure
and then
out.
also other stuff. If Riley ever gets
I
on it,
guess
we'll
I
also
gotta
probably have some reels. Um,
listen.
hey, it's your job to do reels, my job to do the YouTube videos.
I've been busy. Okay, school. um,
Okay.
and
School, yeah, sure.
um,
And that was a good season. Um,
it was a
good
great
year from
season.
us.
I say this
Podcast took a step
every year
forward.
for South Carolina, except for last year. At the end of last year, I was nervous, but I have faith in next year.
I have faith for Indiana
Knock
and
on wood.
Alabama. I think Alabama
I
will be good
always have
next year.
faith, but it sometimes it's misplaced. But I'm not super nervous about next year. I think, yeah.
We'll see. We'll be back to talk reviews of the season with games, moments, stuff like that. Um, we'll try not to be just kind of AWOL until August. Um, I think
Like we said, we don't talk, but
this was a good year for the podcast. We
it was
somehow got better despite being 400 miles away.
audio quality, man. Who would have
Audio
thought?
quality means a lot. Um, we finally brought guests on for the first time,
We had two.
including we had
Well, no, we
two.
had three.
Wait, did we? Are we
Like your
counting my
dad.
dad twice?
Yeah. Well, 3 episodes with a
3
guest.
episodes that had guests.
Two
Um,
guests, 3 episodes with a guest.
next year we will have more people probably coming on as guests.
Probably.
Um, but you know what? Fun season.
It was a good season. Full 9 out of 10.
Full 9 out of 10.
More
Well,
fun. I think it's more fun like being in college and like being at a lot of games. And it's like that makes it 10 times better
yeah. Well,
rather than
Riley,
just yelling at my TV.
you got anything to say?
Nope. Good season.
I got a good season too. I ain't got nothing to say.
Thanks for hosting, Nate.
No problem. Thanks for being my co-host.
No problem.
Well, as always, my name is Nate Cohen,
I'm Riley Davis.
and that was the Red Zone Podcast. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.